Howard for damages and defamation to her pet daycare business.
Court come to order. All rise.
Judge Judy enters.
Have a seat, please.
Kevin approaches.
Hello, Judge. Case 2173, Langley versus Howard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss Langley, your complaint states that you live in a rural area, 13 acres. Your business is pet sitting.
Correct.
The property that you own does not have running water.
Correct.
So all the water for your property has to be trucked in.
Yes.
The defendant is the owner of?
The owner's wife.
The same thing. They own a water business where they deliver by truck massive amounts of water, and you had used them for a period of time. Prior to Labor Day of 2021, when this incident occurred, how long have you been using the defendants?
Probably about a year.
And how often do they deliver water to your property?
4 times a week. Usually 3 times for the pool and once for the house.
Okay. And each time they came, was that on a set time during the week?
We tried to get a set time, but it varied quite often.
Okay. Would they call before they came?
No.
For the year that you had them, when they came, did you pay them at the time that they came?
Yes, I did. Oftentimes we paid in advance. So we paid for
So
the
you
entire
either paid
week.
in advance or you paid at the time of the delivery?
Yes.
Did you give them a check or cash?
Check.
Now let's get to Labor Day 2021. On what day were they supposed to come?
I believe it was the 4th of September. It was on a Friday.
And who was at home to accept the delivery?
We didn't know when they were coming, but I had taken my employee out to lunch, and I called my nephew, who was there holding down the fort, and told him if they deliver water, let them know I forgot the check, so they can either deliver or come back later.
Well, you live in a rural area. Coming back later is a big inconvenience because you forgot the check.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, it happened that it was a big inconvenience because you went out for lunch and you left a nephew. They came, the check wasn't there, and they left with the water. Now, what time did you come?
I wasn't the one who delivered the water. It was my husband, but I believe he had came.
No, he'll tell me.
Oh, okay.
So this was about a year and a half ago. I don't remember the exact time, but it was an AM delivery because we were going out of town Friday evening, going up north. So I was trying to get done with our route fairly early so that we could get out.
So the first time you came to the house was in the morning?
That's correct.
Not lunchtime?
No, it was probably somewhere around 10 a.m. if I was to guess.
Okay. And when you got there that one time, the nephew was there?
That's correct.
And tell me what happened.
Well, the nephew, for starters, is about 12 years old, and the reason why we don't necessarily have a time frame for businesses is because if it's between business hours, when we show up and if they need water, usually that shouldn't be an issue for the business.
Don't give me a whole story, sir. The nephew was 12 years old, okay, and he was left in charge of the pets.
That's correct.
Okay, so the nephew was left in charge of these animals, and when you came, there was no check. What happened?
It wasn't even about the money, the reason why I left. The reason why I showed up there is he was talking on the phone, and he said, we are not ready for water right now.
He was on his phone?
Yes.
Where did this conversation take place?
Near the pool, the dog pool. And we were actually taking 4,000 gallons. So I brought my big truck. I bring 2,000 for the doggy pool and then 2,000 for the house because it was a holiday weekend, so I had to make sure that we got him enough water to last through the holiday weekend.
Okay, and I assume that the plaintiff was satisfied with your service because she had continued with your service for over a year.
Yes, that's correct.
That's according to you. That's according to you. You had been satisfied with their service because if you weren't, you would have found somebody else. But you had been satisfied with their service. According to you, you paid them in advance or on the date of the delivery. On Labor Day, September 4th, you left your 12-year-old nephew there.
12, but...
Well, how old is he, 13?
He's 15.
So what? What's the difference?
Okay, I'm just...
Well, maybe he's 15 now. Maybe he wasn't in 2021. So the nephew said to you, we're not ready for water delivery now.
That's
Is that what you're saying? Now, your business have a phone?
Correct.
Did the plaintiff ever call you and say, I'm home now, I'm sorry, there was a mix-up?
No, so what happened, I showed up there, he wasn't ready for water. I told him, I go, that is...
What do you have to do to get ready for water?
For their purposes, I believe it was to try to use up as much as they can.
No, don't tell me what you believe. I want to know what you have to do to get ready for a water delivery. Do you have to open up a spigot? What do you have to do?
Okay, so basically they're holding tanks that are in basements or in the ground. So normally nobody even has to be there, 90% of our customers. This particular case, one of their tanks is in a basement which doesn't have an alarm. So in order to fill their tank up, somebody has to be down there with a radio to radio up to us to know when to shut the water off.
Okay, so that would have had to have been the nephew, who was between the ages of 12 and 15, would have had to have been in the basement.
That's correct.
Okay. And when you came onto the property, he said, we're not ready for a water delivery.
That's correct.
And he would have had to have been in the basement.
That's correct.
So you left.
Yes. Correct.
What happened next?
Your Honor, I told him that it's not that big of a deal. I got a few more stops. I'm going to go do those stops, and then I'll come back. And then hopefully you'll be ready, and your aunt would be ready for water at that time. So I went and did my 2 stops. So I used up another 4,000 gallons. I filled back up, went back to their house. At this time, it was probably somewhere around 12. And again, he said, we're still not ready for water.
So you went back again at noon?
Between 12 and 1, I would say.
And the plaintiff wasn't home?
That's correct, again.
How many hours passed between the first delivery and the second?
It takes me about 45 minutes per stop, and I know I did about 2 stops, about an hour and a half it took me before I was back there.
And for that hour and a half, she didn't come back. So it was either a very late breakfast or a very early lunch.
That's correct.
Okay, so now they go twice to deliver water to you, and you're not there, and neither is your check. So now you tell me what happened next.
Kyle called me. First, he doesn't have a phone, but we do have a business line. So he called me on the business line and told me that the driver just left. He goes, I don't know where he went. He said, I think
Who told?
Kyle.
Who was that?
I'm sorry, he's my nephew.
Your nephew called you. What time?
Well, our lunch is...
What? You went
can't tell
before lunch because he was there earlier in the
We
morning.
did not go before lunch. We went 12:30 to 2. The dogs always nap 12:30 to 2.
Okay.
We separated the dogs.
How many
We went
times
to
did they?
lunch and we were 5 minutes
How
away.
many times did they come to your house to deliver water?
According to what I was told, I wasn't there. 2.
Well, that's what he says. He came
said 3.
twice. We haven't gotten to the third yet, but he came twice to your house and you weren't there.
Correct.
You're supposed to wait for a service. You're supposed to be there ready for the service. That would be on you. That's not on them, that's on you. They came when they were supposed to deliver water, and you weren't there, and you left somebody who was not equipped to deal with the situation in charge. And what happened was you didn't have water, potentially, over the holiday weekend because they were going away, so you had to scurry to find other water.
Correct.
That's what this case is about.
Caption coming up.
If your preteen or post-teen nephew was on the telephone, didn't want to be bothered at that moment, that ain't his fault. That's your fault that you left somebody incompetent when you were supposed to get a water delivery. All I'm saying to you is, this is nasty a year later. Nasty.
Brenda smiles. A courthouse. The Judy Justice logo appears. In the courtroom, Brenda and Amber and her husband.
Brenda Langley claims business owner Amber Howard defamed her pet daycare business. Amber is countersuing for negative reviews Brenda made toward her business.
Okay, so according to you, a year later, you heard something about their business, so you wrote a negative something about their business on the internet. You'll tell me what that is in a moment. And in retaliation for that, they posted a negative comment about your business, alleging something that had to do with the animals. So that's what this case is about. Your use of the internet to make trouble. You, a year later, according to you, only posted 1 negative review, is that right?
Correct.
And that was a year later.
Yes. Do you want me to tell you why? Because they take the reviews down. You can't leave it.
All
I tried right
all
away.
I'm asking you is, I don't want to hear shoulda, woulda, coulda. A year later, you posted a negative review about
Correct.
them. So I'd like to see the review and why you waited a year. You had had a full year of positive service from these people, and the day that you had a problem with them was your fault. I just determined that. It was your fault.
Okay.
So I want to see what you said about them.
Brenda produces a document, then hands it to Kevin. He brings it to Judy, who reviews it.
Miss Langley, so I read this thing. It says, funny how this shows up as a recommendation. Apparently, they took the rating system off their page. They were always shorting us on water for the pool. Well, you used them satisfactorily for a year. So I think that that's baloney.
We had a couple run-ins over it.
Once when I complained, the driver said my nephew told him to stop. What is that about? Once when you complained about what?
About the pool being short on water.
Just what did your nephew have to do with them? Your nephew is hardly a teenager. What did your nephew have to do with discussing
Nothing,
things
really.
with the bro?
Nothing. He
Nothing.
would help them sometimes bring the hose in and things like that, but he was just a helper every once in a while.
Well, what does that mean?
He didn't have anything to do with it.
Once when I complained, the driver said my nephew told him to stop. Video surveillance proved he was lying. No one ever approached him and no one spoke to him. I showed the owner the video and he didn't seem to care. The last straw was when the owner, that would be them, left for a holiday weekend and we had no water and low pool water. Well, that would be your fault. You don't say that here. It just makes it appear as if they left and left you high and dry, but they came at least twice, he's going to tell me a third time probably, to deliver water, and you weren't there. When my nephew asked if we could pay next week, he got in his truck and left. That's also your fault.
If you would have communicated, I could have brought the money. We were 5 minutes away.
Just a second. That puts the onus on them. Why weren't you there? This is all on you. This isn't on them. No conversation, no phone call, not even a curse word. I called his wife to find out what happened, and she said they were going out of town for the weekend. And you put in parentheses, too bad. Well, you're allowed to go out. You're allowed to go out for lunch when their delivery is coming without a check, but they're not allowed to go out for Labor Day for the weekend. I immediately called a competitor to bail us out. Thank God he took mercy on us and came out right away. We have had excellent service with a competitor ever since. It could have been catastrophic to try not just to live, but run a business with no water over the holiday weekend. You should have been home to get your delivery. And so,
Can I say something?
Sure.
I always paid. They knew I was good for the money, and nobody has to be there when they deliver water. We don't watch them deliver water, except for maybe in the house, and Kyle was there to receive it.
Just a second. He just told me that one of the water tanks is in the basement. Somebody has to be there in the basement in your house. If your preteen or post-teen nephew was on the telephone, didn't want to be bothered at that moment, that ain't his fault. That's your fault that you left somebody incompetent when you were supposed to get a water delivery. All I'm saying to you is, this is nasty a year later. Nasty. And for no reason. I don't hear a reason why this a year later. You want to tell me?
I had heard about some bad business practices, so it got me upset again. So I decided to look and find a way to put a review on. They had taken their reviews off the page. So immediately I wanted to put a review on there, but they have it down as a recommendation.
Who cares?
So that's when I left.
I just still don't understand why a year later you stir this up. So for a year, you were getting water from a competitor.